Hello, this is Brian Foster, and I am live streaming to you on August 23rd, 2021. And today, on Monday, we're going to start trying to do this every Monday. We are going to have questions and answers about Spiritism. So please feel free to type in your questions in the comment section, and I will do the best I can to answer them. First, if you're interested about Spiritism, what I recommend many people to do is to go to my website, nwspiritism.com, and then download the free Spiritism 101 book. It's in English in PDF and in French in PDF. Of course, it's also in Kindle and paperback and in Audible format, if that is what you choose. So that's like less than 100 pages. A small PDF file. I recommend you go over that first, and then I would look at the Spirits book, which is, again, you can click on the picture of Allan Kardec on the right-hand navigation plane on my blog, NW Spiritism. Hello, Zena, and that will take you to the FEB bookstore where you can buy the Spirits book, the Mediums book, the Gospel According to Spiritism. But you don't even have to buy it. You can just type in Allan Kardec space PDF in any search engine, and you'll find them all for free, which is what I found. I read the Spirits book in PDF first. I read them all in PDF before I spent any money on them. So that is what I would recommend if you are just getting into Spiritism, is to do that. And if there, I will, and then the other one is, our first question is that I'm creating, unless people ask questions in the comment section, is how can I communicate with spirits? And a lot of people ask that. They also, they want to say, how can I talk to spirits? Well, first I'd like to say a couple things. Is communicating with spirits isn't like the main thing for Spiritism. It's learning the doctrine, studying what heaven's about, why you're here, how reincarnation works, why you should improve yourself. But many people want to do that. And the other one is, people always tell me, well, the Bible says you shouldn't talk to spirits. Well, and I always say is the Old New Testaments are full of people talking to spirits. They're talking to angels. Angels are spirits. And the fact is the priestly class did not want people talking to spirits because they did not want direct communication to spirits, because the priestly class wanted to retain the power. This happened in Egypt. This is all before Christianity, even in paganism, all sorts of is. The priestly class usually knew. In fact, the ancient Egypts were very good on this, of how to talk to spirits, talking to spirits all the time, learning information from spirits. But they kept all that hidden from the peasants, as we say, and so they could make money and retain their power from that. In the 1850s, when the Spirit of Truth, working through the codification of Allan Kardec, wanted to free that up, and they promised us they're going to have a lot more people with mediumistic ability. They're going to talk to everybody, not just the priestly class, because it's time to open up communications to everyone. And we're seeing that now. We're really seeing that in the beginning of the 21st century. So if you are interested in exercising that, one is try to find other people who are interested too. I recommend it is you work as a group. Now, I know it's hard for anybody in the English-speaking country to find spiritist centers. It is much easier in Brazil, which I've been to medium meetings in Brazil. I'm not a medium, first I'll tell you that, so you can take everything I say with a grain of salt. I'm just giving you the kind of the academic and what I can report, what I've seen other people do. But in spiritist centers in Brazil, they go through like a year training. The first year training is they go through the literature, the books, the Spirits book and other books. And then the second year, they will put a new medium sitting in the same room with the other mediums. And a lot of that is because you need to spot what type of spirits are talking to you, because spirits are, high or low, you can't really tell until you're educated. So if you're doing it yourself, I do know on my Facebook site, Spirits in this Spirit World Around Us, that and it's in the description of the video below, they'll have like classes online And I don't know how good that will be. And then then I would recommend you read the Medium's book. It's right there, and kind of start from there before you do anything. Okay, here's the first question. How do we know the Spiritist doctrine is the truth versus other doctrines and teachers that have come forward to teach people about the afterlife? And that's a good question. So first of all, what Allan Kardec said is, by looking at Spiritism, you can see, the more you read about Spiritism, it's all about obeying the golden rule. There's nothing negative as far as being mean to people and trying to take power or any of that. So at least that is a foundation. The other thing is Spiritists say is it is a doctrine, is not a religion. And what Spiritism, the spirits tell us in Spiritism, is that someday the other religions will adopt the tenets of Spiritism, meaning reincarnation, karma, those type of things, and provide more information about heaven and the processes, how to ascend. So Spiritism isn't meant to replace any religion. It's really meant to be there for religions to pick up and understand their basic tenets. Now, let me carry on. So now what you see, and I see a lot of people always offering me books and videos about someone channeling a spirit. And I'm not saying any of those things are wrong. In fact, you always grasp a lot of information. In fact, on Tuesdays, I read books by people channeling a spirit, telling about the afterlife and heaven, and I talk about the parallels with Spiritism. And I think those are it is a very useful thing to look at. And so I would always take anything you hear from Spiritism or anyone else with a grain of salt and see how they add up and compare with your conscience. Does it feel right to you? So I'm the first one to say, and actually Spiritism says the same thing. They don't want you to take this on faith, meaning blind faith. That's not what the spirits want you to do. They don't want you to say, oh, I believe in Spiritism because Brian told me so it must be true. No, what you should do is compare that of what Spiritism tells you to how you feel, and then what experiences you've had, maybe supernatural experiences or your own logic by analyzing what's around you, and then create that in your mind and create a firm foundation. Spiritism does not want people following it just because someone told them to. And that's why there's no rituals or prayers or ways to dress. It's really intellectual versus many others. So I hope that answers that question. Take the next question. Regarding forgiveness, is it a requirement only for this realm? Yeah, so I wrote, I've talked about that. And forgiveness, so forgiveness is a requirement everywhere. And so let me bring this into context. Jesus was, it's funny, when you understand Spiritism, you see a lot of things what Jesus said in the Bible was like, it wasn't just parables of like, this is good advice, right? You should do this, like forgive 7 times 70. And because if you don't forgive 7 times 70, if you don't forgive those people, and then you go into the spirit world and you keep plotting revenge, you're going to spend all your time, plotting revenge on if they're incarnated or discarnated. You're going to, instead of you ascending, you're going to waste your time. And so forgiveness is important anywhere you are. So, and what happens? So, and let me tell you, so if you make an enemy in this world, and the spirit world does not like unresolved conflicts. So remember this. They don't like unresolved conflicts. So if you had a lover you spurned and it was just completely wanted you, and now he's just obsessed with you, right? So in the future life, that lover could come back as your child, because now the spirit world wants that person to understand parental love versus the kind of more of a physical love. And so these things, so that's why you really don't want to make bad enemies, because they're not going to allow you to escape that and go, oh, that enemy's dead, he's dead. No, 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 no. It doesn't work that way. If that enemy's dead in the spirit world, instead of working on him or herself, they could be trying to working against you. So, and vice versa. If you die, you still may want to go against that. So let me give you an example. I was in a mediums meeting, and I was up in the wall, not on the table. And I leaned back, and this trance medium said, Zika, Zika, Zika. Oh, I died of Zika. The consoler medium said, oh, that's too bad. He goes, no, goes, I wanted the other person to die of Zika. You know, and I kept asking and doing everything I could for that person to die of Zika. But then I died of Zika, and I still want her to die of Zika. So here's this woman who is in the spirit world and trying to still want revenge on another person. And I listen to this, I go, well, that doesn't make sense. Don't they know they're in the spirit world? Wouldn't you concentrate on something more important? Evidently not. That's how some people are. So, you know, for this, and so they tried to tell her in this mediums meeting, like, you know, you're in the spirit world, you know, let Jesus Christ and the spirits work this out. But I don't know how successful they were. So anyway, I hope that helps. Okay, let's try the next question. How does one be him or herself? In other words, how do we find out who we really are, and how do we live and act from our own authentic self? Well, that's a good question. And I think is the first step is to de-stress yourself, because when you're stressed, you have a tendency to act differently. And the way to de-stress yourself, in fact, I talk about this a lot, is it is in my book, How to Live Inner Peace with Spiritism. It goes through like 24 steps, which was a poem by Louise. And I take each stanza and I say what he meant and how to achieve that. But basically, real quick, is start listening to your conscience, start following your conscience, and then what feels right to you, start doing. Because when you say be yourself, in other words, find out who we really are, and that's good, but then why are you on earth? You're on earth to really rewire your personality and your character. So why is that? Because, sorry, I need some water. Because we're supposed to try to get rid of our primitive emotions and replace those with advanced emotions. So I would try and be as less stress as possible, and that would balance your chakras, or 4 centers, as they say in Spiritism. And the more relaxed you are, the more your true self can come out and be who you really are. And by the way, your true character comes out between about 15 and 20, depending. When you're a child, you're very malleable, and that's the way the spirit world makes it. So your parents can kind of help format you a little bit better than you were in the past, hopefully, if you had a good set of parents. I know some people don't. And then your true character starts coming out in your teenage years or so. So that's why, you know, not only is an adolescent going through hormonal changes, but their character's coming out. It's a tough time. So I hope that helps. Okay, here's Joe. Here's another question from Joseph. Someone did black magic against me a few years ago. A demonic entity tried attacking me physically with objects. How do I combat spiritual attacks according to Spiritism? And there's a lot of information that I've read in spiritualist literature about this. And it's full of people doing attacks. Now, first of all, know that they can't kill you. They can't really, I mean, they can try inspire you to do dumb things. In fact, they do, like try to inspire people who are in a weak state for suicide, to commit suicide. And that's when sometimes that suicide is, kind of treated differently. But usually, that's not a good idea to do. So the way to combat that is to ask for help. And there's a couple of ways. One is prayer and meditation. Everyone has a guardian angel. Talk to your guardian angel. Say, please help me with this. What you don't do is say, I hate you, demonic entity. I ban you. I banish you, and think mean thoughts. That's just like a bully on the playground. They'll just enjoy that more. And what you do is you say, okay, why are you doing this? And probably in your case, the demonic entity did that as a payment to someone who asked them to do that. But even then, it's usually good to say, I hope everything's okay with you. Ask other good spirits to help this demonic entity not to do that anymore. And that is really an important thing, is to always keep love in your heart and not try to fight it, but embrace it with love and see what happens. In fact, I'll give you an example. Chico Xavier was at the end of his mediums meeting. People were lined up to talk to him, shake his hand. And a guy wrote a book about Chico, was standing next to Chico. And this couple came up and they said, Chico, our daughter, she's like, oh, she's had horrible times. She's, obsessive. She has these attacks. She can't control herself. And then Chico said, go do good things. Go do good things. And so the couple went away. And about a year later, they came back and they said, Chico, and the guy was standing next to Chico again. Chico, our daughter's all better. She doesn't have these psychotic attacks. And he goes, oh, that's great. And then Chico talked to this guy, who later wrote a book, says, okay, this is what happened. This is why their daughter's better. They went to prisons to help prisoners. And they would help prisoners, they'd read to prisoners, etc. The mothers, the spirit mothers, who were watching over their poor sons in this prison, saw how nice this couple was to help their sons. They wanted to explore more about this couple. They went to the couple's home and saw spirits bothering their daughter. And they go, what are you bothering their daughter for? These people are wonderful. And the spirits left. This is why you're dealing, when people say demonic entity, and in a lot of Christian lore, it's like for some reason God created demons or the devil, and they're demons and devils forever. Well, Spiritism says, first, there's no such thing as the devil. There are really bad educated, ignorant, and mean spirits out there. But someday they'll all be perfect and wonderful people. But those demons, who we call demons, and those people who we think are devils, they're us, but an immature, right? They are humans, and they're free-willed to be as mean as they want to be. And therefore, and you can't shoot them because they're immortal. It wouldn't do any good. So the only thing you can do is reason with them. And of course, that's how they do it. You'd be surprised in the books by Andre Louise when, they don't go and say, because the higher spirit could, if they wanted to, they say, leave that person alone. You're out of here. And they're just so superior. There's no contest. There's no fight. But they don't do that. They try to talk to them. They want them to learn. They want them to refashion their own ideas. And it's like what Spiritism say, oh, you better believe this, or you're going to be excommunicated, or you're going to go to hell. No, it's all about soft power, and it's about rational behavior, and for you to make your own intellectual decisions. I hope that helps. Okay, let me see the next question. Okay, here's another one. Does Spiritism speak about NDEs, and why does it seem some are tailored to people's beliefs, such as a Christian who comes back and says reincarnation isn't true? Yes, and that's a good question. In fact, I've written about that. So when I say the spirits tell us, they're not going to just, they're not going to like force you to do something. And I see this true, and I see this with Kat Kier, and I see this with other prophets that I see on YouTube. There are many things. Overall, I believe she went to heaven because she says these little clues that, yeah, that's right, but it doesn't like she doesn't say everything I think she should say, and I could be wrong, but I think so. Let me give you an example first. Edgar Casey, a wonderful American medium. He did not believe in reincarnation. And but years, he would talk about people's past lives. And finally, he said, yeah, I guess there must be reincarnation. The spirit world could at any time said, Edgar, come on, there's reincarnation. Get with the program. They don't do that. They let you figure it out yourself. And Howard now he was more of an atheist. But even then, they didn't want probably to open up his he probably had a set of beliefs that he had before, maybe he was younger and so forth. And they're just going to give to him what they're going to give to him and let him make his own decisions. So they're not going to, the spirit's not going to come and tell you, well, you're wrong about that, you're wrong about, this. And no, they're just going to explain to you. And if you ask a question, they'll give you as good as answers as they can, but they're not going to tell you, they're not going to try and correct you in everything you do. They're going to let you learn on your own. And in fact, there was a great passage in the book Through the Mist, which I'm reading now, where the spirit in the world says, can't you, everything I learned, well, not everything, but so much of what I learned is not true. Can we go back and tell them? And the spirit says, well, we've tried, but as soon as I try and tell them things that doesn't fit their dogma, they think I'm a demon and they reject me. So so therefore other spirits come and kind of just tell them what they want to hear, not the whole picture. And hopefully at some later date, they'll be more open and we'll tell them more. So it's interesting. So this is a long game, and the long game is for you to internalize a very solid foundation of what you believe or not believe, and they're not going to try and rip it out of you by shocking you with truth. So that is why, in fact, like Kat Kier one time said, yeah, when you come to Earth, you have like a definite talent or something, and it was almost like, well, you're almost hinting at predetermined trials. So they're kind of, I can tell they were hinting for her because she's just a wonderful lady, and I love listening to her. And so there's a lot of things, and the things she sees are like right on. Like they'll go to a big gathering and see these people have stones, and these bright stones that shine and stuff like that. And it's like Spiritism says it's kind of a badge. And you can tell by the color of the stone and how they wear it and so forth. You can tell kind of what group they belong to, all that what Spiritism tells us. And again, it's there's a lot of information, and that's where I think this would be interesting. I hope that answers your question. Then here's DB. So I think you have to listen to your conscience. Yes, that's what I was. That's what I was saying below. Before that, that's absolutely true. Okay, here's recently I received a mental impression message from a spirit known as Suzanne. The message was positive, but receiving messages after involvement in Spiritism and meditation normal. Yes, and in fact, that's what meditation is all about. So meditation is you kind of opening your mind, which I know you really, they say have a blank mind. I've never had a blank mind in my life yet. So, but it comes if you get more comfortable with it. And they will try and give you positive feedback if they can. Now, again, if you're doing that, I would still recommend before you ever listen to that is to read the medium's book to get you really understand the different levels of spirits who you're talking to, because some spirits could come and say that they're pretend that they're really nice, and but then later on try to have you do something stupid with some lower spirit may have. So you have to be careful when you have these messages, and be very wary. And because the more you understand spiritism, they will give you positive messages, and as I've said before in other talks, usually the messages you get is how to be more spiritual, how to educate yourself. They're not gonna give you a bunch of false uh, flattery. A higher spirit talking to you is like the teacher you had when you were in middle school or someplace like that you hated, and then 10 years later you thought, oh, she, let's say she really pushed me, and I learned a lot from her. And of course, at that age, you don't want to do anything. And I've been in meetings where after the meeting and the spirit mentor of the meeting talks, I go, well, you guys need to work harder. You need to study harder. You need to be more in harmony. It's not like, oh, you did wonderful. You're all wonderful people. No, no, they'll give you the unvarnished truth. Then they won't be mean about it. They're never mean, but they will. Yeah, they won't. What you right? BS you, I should say. So just be wary. But yes, this is normal, and but yeah, arm yourself with study is what I would say. Okay. What can you do if a spirit tells you they do not like you? I would like to know why, but do not wish to make contact. So, um, what's wrong with saying, why don't you like me? You most probably you did something to them in a past life. And you can say, and my wife's had this same problem, and of course she's never got an answer back, but she'll say, um, well, what did I do? And uh, can we talk about it? I'm trying to be a better person. And so there's a reason. They don't like you just to be hateful and mean. There's a reason. And I understand you don't wish to make contact. Well, then don't. You don't have to. You can pray and meditate and ask other spirits to handle that situation for you. But you can say is, can you provide me an explanation, and then just pray. Don't make contact. You can just pray. Look, please forgive me. I don't know what I did, but I'm sure it was something that I did. I am trying to be a better person. I'm learning. I'm growing myself, and I would approach it like that. And that's what I do. Although I've never, of course, that's because I'm probably so dense. I've never been affected by a spirit. I've known other people that have. And why I haven't, I'm not sure. Because everything I've been told, now I've never had a past life regression, but I've received messages from the spirit world, and I've had mediums tell me about my past life. And the funny thing is, I've never been told anything good I've ever done. In one message, they said, look, uh, you know, you know, we're having you do this, but in the past you've gone after treasure and you failed again and again and again. And I go, oh, that's not good. So everything I've done is basically what the message, to paraphrase it quickly, is I've been in positions of responsibility, and instead of helping people, I made myself richer or took advantage of them, something like that. So not good. And of course, that's why I understand now is when I've had a couple opportunities when I got paid off from jobs that companies that were bought out, and I got pretty good money, 6 figures, but not a big 6 figures at all. But and I thought I saved it, and I thought I put it in the market, but everything I always did is I lost it all. And now with spiritualism, I said, okay, I understand. I'm not allowed to have that because I took what others. So um, that's an explanation. So the answer is and the other thing I've been told that I've done, and why I'm not sure why I don't have a bunch of spirits around me hating me a lot, is that now this may be a long time ago, and maybe I have atoned for that. In fact, I think I have. I'll tell you that story. Is I've been told that I've enslaved people and that I've chopped their feet off and tortured them in order to find out where they've hid their treasure. And, another bad thing I've done. So I think I've always been told these things is so I can tell everybody here that here I am an example of someone who's not a rotten SOB that can actually improve by the process of karma and reincarnation. So I hope that answers that question by me giving you a horrible example of myself. So here's the next question. I believe reincarnation is true. I mean, it explains the injustices in the world. And that's, to me, that's the statement. What I always say is the fact that we're on a planet of atonement explains the fact, and there's reincarnation and there's karma, and people are on predestined tracks to pay for their past wrongs. It's why good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. There's always an explanation. We don't see it because we're looking at one point in the huge trajectory of many lives. And therefore, this wonderful, Aunt B, who's just a wonderful lady, but then has this terrible sickness and pain and dies what you think is a horrible death. But really what it was is that she had done something to somebody else at one time, and she probably arranged to die of that sickness. And in that sickness, she became spiritually much more advanced. And in her last days and hours, and then Spiritism tells us, don't underestimate those last hours. Spiritism tells us that you'd be surprised how much people grow and change by those thinking back and really making important transformations in those last hours of life. So absolutely, I totally agree with you. If a religion costs money, is it really a religion? Well, I mean, I know, I understand. And in fact, that's why spiritist mediums do not charge. And we try in spiritist centers, they'll ask you for a monthly help to keep the center open, but just enough to keep to pay the mortgage on the center. But so there's some things that will cost money. Money's always a factor, so I wouldn't be too harsh. But if they're always trying to fleece you, and this whole thing about tithing, that is, it's getting, overbearing, where they try to be intrusive into every aspect of your life. And once a religion does that, that's when I would pull back. And in fact, I had a friend of mine in high school, didn't go to church for a bit, and got a letter from the Catholic Church saying, well, you're now excommunicated. It's like, whatever. And there's other ones that will send you bad, messages and letters and saying that, no, you're not part of us anymore. And well, because you didn't pay us money, and that's them doing you a favor. So no, it's Jesus Christ does not want us to get to heaven because we paid money. In fact, there's a kind of a funny vignette in one of the Andre Luis books. He was in the lower zone, which is the zone between the crust of the earth and the bottom level of heaven. And he saw this lady, and she was dressed like in the 19th century. And so he goes, I can't believe I was in this horrible place. And he said, see, it must have been there for 200 years, 100 years at least. He goes, I was always I always had the most important pew in the front of the church. I paid the priest money. I gave money to my son to give to the priest to pray for me every week. There's a name, I can't remember what it is. Of course, the son probably been dead for 100 years. And he goes, I don't know why I had to end up in this place. And of course, that's because she is who she was. So yeah, money doesn't, in the spirit world, it doesn't mean anything. In fact, they always say is, someone who could just be at the lowest job, a ditch digger, let's just say, is just the nicest, most wonderful person. In fact, I did read this one guy said the spirit was in heaven, and he was at the borderland where people came in from the from just passing away, and his mentor was there. Goes, oh, so and so's coming over, and so they had like a lot of high spirits come and meet this guy, and he goes, "What are you all here for?" He said, "Oh, you've done wonderful." And his mentor was saying, "Yeah, he never had any money. He only worked in like work camps." And he goes, "Oh, you've done so much." He goes, "No, I haven't done anything." Well, you loan you put half your lunch to somebody at one time, and goes, "Well, that was nothing." He goes, "I did nothing," and yet he did a lot. And so there's the hero. I mean, the world, the earth, in our culture is full of unsung heroes. We don't see them because unless you're selfish and uh, demonstrative, you don't get noticed. Unfortunately, hopefully this culture will change. So anyway, I hope that answers that question. There's another one. Okay, I was about 10 years old. I feel like it cursed my life. I'm in a more powerful personal place, but still wonder why are they allowed to have influence to harm us? And that's all part of your trial. And yes, there's some people, some really unfortunate people, that they let obsess to the point of them becoming psychotic, obsessive, uh, and really in bad shape. And that is atonement for horrible things they have done in the past. And now to you in the now, you're saying, why is this happening to me? But when you go, but remember, all these experiences are into you. Everything, you're going to remember everything when you're in the spirit world. You go back to spirit world, you'll know that that was a hard price to pay in that certain life. And that then your instinct will be, and you may have this instinct now, your instinct will be is in your next physical life is don't treat people like horrible. Don't be really mean to people. Don't plot against people. Don't steal from people, because those are just the things of why spirits will try to hurt you, and you'll then put that deeper into your personality, saying, I'm not going to treat people bad anymore. And that's all part of the learning process. It's not punishment, it's edification. And so you've got a tough trial. Absolutely. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And the more you pray and meditate and try to do good for other people, the more you'll lessen that effect. You're not cursed for life. You're just seeing the effects of really taking advantage of other people in a previous life. So, keep your spirits up. And I was talking about my past lives, how I really took advantage and tortured people. To give you an example of a life I had to go through, which I kind of think is true. I'm not perfectly sure. I was talking to a medium, and I was asking about something for my good friend, and he goes, "Oh, I won't say names." He goes, "Ah, oh, I understand why you're really interested in him and why you really care about him." He goes, "Because he cared for you when no one else wanted you." So now this is just me and my suppositions. I feel that in one of my lives, I was probably born maybe severely disabled, maybe without feet because I cut people's feet off, right? They did that back in the ancient times, Roman times. They didn't want people escaping, so they make them sit at their place and cut their feet off. They, it wasn't nice. Um, and I think he brought me in, and that's why I always felt like I wanted to be a good friend. And that makes sense to me, is that, that's why instinct wise, when we met, I just liked him right away, became good friends. And that, when whatever I can do to help him, that's what I'm doing. And I think that's instinct from a past life, or at least part of it. So I hope that makes sense. So you're going through a hard time, but this is the good news. if you reconcile with these people that are not, being nice to you, is that you'll have that trial done. It won't affect you in your next life. So I always tell people, if you don't like your life here, be as good as you can, because your next life will be much better. Okay, and another one is, how do you deal with a family member who doesn't seem to care about you no matter what you do? Well, again, it was I was talking about that they always want us reconciled, right? And that if you were really mean to somebody or they were really mean to you, well, they may be your brother, your sister, parent, aunt, or uncle. And their instinct when you're enemies in the past is not to like you. And that is hard to get around. So the spirit world setting up for you and that other person an environment where you can reconcile. Now, so the most important thing is not to hate, and just pray for that, think good thoughts for that person, even though they don't like you. To say, okay, and then if they try to be nice, to be nice back to them. Don't gossip about them. That's one of the most important things. Is don't no malicious gossip. That really trains your mind to be ready for the spirit world. But and I tell this to people who have really dysfunctional families too, if you've tried and you keep your mind open and you don't have, really harbor um, constant ill feelings, there's nothing wrong that after you've tried and done your best is to withdraw from that situation. You don't need to keep going over to, Uncle Bob's house and have him have a tirade against you for, how stupid you are and how dumb you look, right? You don't need to do that. It doesn't serve any purpose. It doesn't. No, you can try with Uncle Bob and say, Uncle Bob, I'm not going to put up with that. I love you and respect you. It's because I love everybody. But, if you're going to be that way, I'm sorry, I got to withdraw. And you can withdraw. And just know that you did your best. And that's all you can do. You can't force people to love you. You can't force people to care about you. And sometimes you just have to step back and then just, be open-minded, hopefully, if that's possible. But don't do any, don't talk to other family members and say, oh, this person's a jerk. No, just never say anything bad about them. Now, will that get you any kudos from anybody? Probably not. They'll just think you're, a pushover, but that's okay. You're not. And the spirit world knows that you're doing the honorable thing is just by just, but the main thing is no malicious gossip. When it's not easy. Okay. Are there many Italian spiritists? I don't know. I know there's spiritists in Italy, um, but I haven't. I don't know. I know there's the most spiritists there are right now, as far as a percentage of population, is in Brazil. And then there's smatterings of us in the English-speaking world, United States and England and so forth. I know, now, of course, France is where Allan Kardec first came. They still have spiritists there. And in fact, I've had 3 of my books translated into French. Spiritism 101 is in French on PDF for free. So is the Problem is the Solution, translated. It's on PDF for free. And then How to Live I had that translated by a woman who really did a great job, and we put that on Kindle and paperback. But I don't know of any Italian spiritists. So it's a good question, but I am not sure about that. But it's growing. I mean, it's slowly. I mean, I think Spiritism, we're not going to be out in the street corners and saying, believe us or you're damned. It's okay. It's just like DB says, reincarnation makes everything make sense. And that's what we're here is for us to say, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And that's what counts. Okay, here's another question. Generally, how long does one have to study Spiritism before one can begin lecturing or speaking on the subject? That's that's entirely up to how well you feel. I mean, okay, so I started studying Spiritism, and probably within 2 years, I started my blog and started writing articles. And within 3 years, 4 years, I started had things in the library in our local town and stuff like that. And other spiritists. And so the funny thing is this. So Medium told me, he says, um, look, Brian, and she told me this would be because she was in Oregon and I was in Washington. He goes, yeah, there's this building that's white, and it was a Grange, and like you see a lot of Grange if you're in the Northwest or whatever. And so I gave a talk on NDEs, the subject, and she told me, just be careful now when people are gonna, push back on what you're saying. So I gave the talk, and I expected people to raise their hand and say, hey, you're an idiot, right? No one did. But then afterwards, when it came out, I met a bunch of spiritists. I said, well, we don't think you studied long enough to talk about spiritism, right? I go, oh, that's the pushback. I just laughed. Look, the spirits are going to inspire you when you're ready, and that's what's going to happen. So it's as long as short as you want, and if you've had a lot of upbringing and thought about the spirit realm and what it means to you, and you can talk now. I mean, it's all up to you. Let me get another question. Can you talk about what second death is? I felt for a long time that perhaps we are already dead. Finding your channel has caused me to question deeply what I thought I knew. So can you expand on what is second death? I know there's a lot of people thinking that we live all our lives in parallel, which I said, I don't think you learn from that. That's not what Spiritism says, is we don't live our lives in parallel. We go, now there's no time in the spirit world, but we kind of go from one to the other. There's events for us to grow and become better. How can we grow and become better if we live all our lives in parallel? I don't see that happening. And his second death is that just because we're now in this physical body, I would say, and I talk about this in my book, The Spirit Realm, Spiritism is Revealed in the Reality of Our Existence. Oh, it's in the Bible. Okay, this question is, Jesus says it's in the Bible. I don't remember that. I probably didn't think about that. The second death after judgment. Okay. I believe, this is my interpretation, and I haven't gone deep into that. Now, when you pass over, you have there's always some sort of meeting or something like that for some people. Not all the time. Sometimes you just put where you are. But people who are in heaven will meet and go over their life. And even people in the lower zones are ending up there may have kind of this review. And so then they'll talk about it, and there's never like meanness about it. It's always kind of going over and saying, I could have done this, could have done that one. And that would help you better. But then other spirits who will go right down into the lower zone, into the dark abyss, a type of purgatory. Now, Revelation is very interesting because even the spirits have said when John was sent to heaven to see all these things happen, he made as good a sense as he could of what he saw. In fact, something very interesting before I try to answer this question is when he said that, when this high spirit on the throne talked, you could see like, was it lightning bolts coming out or swords or shiny swords coming out of his mouth? Which is then when I read in the books by Jiva Owen, they're talking about different ways spirits communicate. And one of the ways they communicate is, mind to mind. They put words into your mind, but they also will send visions. They'll send images, and they'll use a combination to make sure that the communication was really understandable. They say, "Well, meet me at the corner of so and so at this big rock," and then they'll send an image of the rock. When an image is sent, it's like a flash of light comes out of their mouth. So this is what John saw. It was really interesting. So what exactly he thought, what the spirit world tried to tell him, and how he interpreted that, it's a good question, and I am not sure. I think my idea is that the second death means that you don't get to go into the nice place. You either go into the lower zone, where you stay only until you change your character attitude, or it's kind of like the split the wheat from the tares, is, as they say, what's going to happen on our planet of regeneration, because we're coming from a planet of atonement where we atone for our past wrongs, to a planet of regeneration where we're not going to worry about that, and there's not going to be inferior spirits all around us. That those spirits who haven't got with the program, haven't tried to get with the light, will be off the earth and sent to a less advanced planet. And so that is, in fact, that's what happened to a whole group of spirits around 6,000 years ago. They were at a planet, Capella, and they were spirits that were kind of at the beginning of planet regeneration. I'm not quite sure at what stage, but they were just not advancing as they should, and they were sent to Earth. And imagine being sent to Earth from like where we are now, TV, plumbing, right, clean water, and sent to Earth back then. That was quite startling and shocking to them, and that could be what they're talking about. That's just my opinion. I'm not certain about that. And of course, then she says, "Yeah, it makes reincarnation more sense to me." Exactly. I think it explains a lot. What are demons and what is darkness? Well, demons are people. Demons are us. They are just spirits who have not seen the light, have not tried to follow the path of love, charity, fraternity, and honesty. And they are, it's amazing when people who are cruel and mean, when they die, they're no different when they become a spirit, and they like to go around the lower zone and cause mischief, and sometimes outright, bad as they can. So now, but the main thing is, so there's no, Spiritism says this, like God did not make, I'm going to make you a demon, you're a demon forever. No, they're just less advanced. They're retrogressed humans that someday will become better people. They will grow out of it. And darkness is the absence of light. And what they mean by that is darkness is the absence of knowledge about the love and goodness of God in your heart, that you'll accumulate that. And that's why it's a good question. When people have had NDEs or visions and they see angels, and they see angels like they'll have wings, and they'll be really fuzzy, they're bright, right? Well, if you were at the same spiritual level as that angel, they look like a normal person. But since you are at a lower level, when you're an NDE or you had a vision, it's so bright, the light's there, because it's not because they generate the light within them, it's because they reflect the light, the love of God from them. And the higher you go, the more energy and the less matter you are. So that's why they become fuzzy and people think they have wings. So the darkness is the absence of that. So, and in fact, when Henri Louis says, he comes down to the spirit world and he sees all these dark auras, because these people are thinking primitive thoughts. They are, plotting revenge, or those type of things, instead of trying to think, thinking good things about people, thinking about something productive or something they can do for somebody else. I hope that answers your question. If one ends up in the lower zone after death, do they get reincarnated from the lower zone directly, or are they helped into heaven before taking on a new life? The answer is both. If you're in the lower zone, you can work your way up to heaven, and when you're in heaven, then when you're into a new life, you can work with your kind of spirit mentors, and you can decide what type of body you want. You can uh, be part of the group that decides your trials and tribulations. Even some of the people in the lower zone, they may be kind of starting to be ready. They could be in these little outposts in the lower zone, and they could work with people on how to plan their next life. So, and in fact, there's lots of stories about that. Now, if you're down there in the dark abyss or the lower zone, and you're still being the kind of person that hasn't earned the right to be in heaven, then no, they plan your life, and you have this urge to all of a sudden go into this embryo that's just been fertilized, and it will be like a magnetic attraction, and you're there. You don't get a say. In fact, one time Andre Luis, in one of his books, found his grandfather in the lower zone, and he, like a real miser, and he says, anything you can do for my grandfather? Because he loved him, of course. And oh yeah, we can reincarnate him. We'll reincarnate him as a laborer. And Christ gives us a lot of leeway here, because when we reincarnate someone as someone who's not going to make much of an impression upon the culture and society at the time, we have a lot of leeway. So to me, that was like, oh my God. So think of having trials and tribulations, and think of your trial and tribulations intersecting with all other people's trials and tribulations, and think how the spirit world wishes to guide the whole earth and each individual into the lesson plan they need to do. Think how complicated that is. And so you have someone like a famous doctor or general or politician, or let's say Allan Kardec. He must have been surrounded by all sorts of spirits, making sure these things all happen, and one thing after another work correctly. I mean, think of Allan Kardec back in the 1850s. All the sicknesses he had to not get, right, because you could die from all lots of stuff back then. No penicillin. So yeah. So but then if you are, they say, oh, we're going to have your grandfather have this very more lower. Not I won't say lower, but less effect of the culture of the time, then it gets pretty reincarnated. So yeah, the answer is, if they're in that lower zone, that bam, they're gone. And then the question is, what's the difference between your spirit and your soul? Now, Spiritism uses them both interchangeably. Now, I know some people say there's a difference, but I don't use that difference. They use both. And let me show you, let me bring this down, how Spiritism thinks of these things. So this is what Spiritism says. We are a spirit, which is a logical encapsulation of our personality, but they call us personalities. We have our paraspirit, which you'll see still when we pass over. That's our covering, how we look, how we think we look, and it reflects how we are from the inner. And then the body. Now, that's the physical body. When you in your physical body, the paraspirit will connect to every cell of your body. And that is how they control. And that's how your spirit is always in communication with your paraspirit. Of course, that communication is not perfect because we filter it all through our inferior human brain. And some of us are smarter than others and more alert than others, all that. Whereas remember, in the spirit world, spiritual, born with equal capabilities, how you want to improve yourself, that makes a difference. But on the earth, we all have these different limitations, but all planned, right? So someone you could meet like pretty dim bulb, well, that person could have been really smart, and it could have been a genius in past life, but this life, no, they were using that intelligence for something not so good. So this time they're going to concentrate on their spirituality. So Those things happen all the time. Oh, here's an answer. Here's DB. I believe soul is the individual consciousness and spirit is that which emanates you. I mean, that's that's fine. But as far as spirits are concerned, the spirit is really the one is what uh, is spirit and soul are interchangeable. But nothing wrong in that. Can you become infested with several spirits? If so, what happens to you mentally and spiritually when that happens? So the answer is you can become obsessed by spirits and people, and that happens. Now, okay, before I say anything, if you have any type of mental problems, always go see your psychiatrist or psychologist. And in fact, there are spiritist hospitals in Brazil that will fight, paranoia and disorders, mental disorders, and they'll do it regular, with sessions. But they'll also have medium meetings to see what spirits are trying to obsess you, and then they'll try to logically, as I was talking before, talk to those spirits and ask them, why are you doing this? Can we help you? Can you not do this to this person? That person's trying to become better. And and in fact, you'll read this in the Medium's book by Alan Kardec. You can get that Alan Kardec space PDF. So if someone is really obsessing and connected to that person, maybe several spirits, you really need to pray and meditate. And if someone's strong enough, they can get rid of those spirits themselves, but they may need to bring in other spirits to help that person get rid of those spirits. Something like exorcism, where someone holds a cross and pours water over your head, they just laugh at that. You've got to use logic and reason and love. So it really does affect you mentally and spiritually when that happens. That is an attack upon you because of probably what happened in past lives or something like that. And it's something that you need to deal with, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of meditation and prayer and asking for help from your guardian angel and any of the spirits that are overlooking you from above. So I hope that helps. So I've gone over time here. These are always great things. So for those interested and they want to get an idea of the spirit realm and the physical realm, which is a subset of the spirit realm, what you are as a spirit, how you grow as a spirit, what's the future of Earth, what's your future, I suggest you read this. I have other books. They go deeper into heaven. They go deeper into what is the spirit. It's like my book, How to Live, How for You to Ascend, and I have books like The Problem is a Solution, all these things. It gives you dive deeper, but this one kind of gives you a good survey of what is the spirit realm, what you are, who you are, what you're here for, and that type of stuff. So I hope that helps. And I want to thank everyone who asked questions. And remember, I'll try to do this every Monday. And I want to say God bless